In a small German town in 1887, Friedrich Nietzsche sat alone, writing a sentence that would outlive him by more than a century. He wrote about a herd, not cattle, not sheep in a field, but human beings. Millions of them. People who had never once asked themselves why they believed what they believed, why they wanted what they wanted, why they feared what they feared. People who simply absorbed their values from the crowd around them, the way a sponge absorbs water, without ever noticing they'd made a choice at all. Nietzsche had a word for this. He called it herd morality, and he believed almost everyone was living inside it. This is a video about the opposite, about what it actually takes to step outside the herd and build a set of values that are genuinely, entirely your own. Let's start with an uncomfortable question. Where did your values come from? Not the ones you'd say out loud in an interview. The real ones. The belief that you need a certain job title to be respected. The belief that success looks like a house, a wedding, a promotion, in that order. The belief that anger is bad, that ambition is good, that this political side is right and that one is wrong. Did you sit down and reason your way to these beliefs? Or did you inherit them from your parents, your religion, your culture, your school, your social media feed? The same way you inherited your accent? Nietzsche's answer was blunt. Almost none of it was chosen. Most of it was absorbed. And he wasn't gentle about what this makes us. He said most people live like sheep, not because they're stupid, but because following the herd is safe. The herd protects you. It tells you exactly what to think, so you never have to risk being wrong alone. It gives you belonging in exchange for obedience. But Nietzsche believed this safety comes at a devastating price. You trade your entire life, the only one you get, for the comfort of never having to stand apart. To understand how deep this goes, Nietzsche took us all the way back to ancient history, to something he called the origin of morality itself. He argued that in the ancient world, the powerful, the noble, the strong called their own qualities good: courage, strength, pride, vitality. Simple. Whatever they were was good. This he called master morality. But the weak, the oppressed, those who could not compete on those terms, eventually struck back, not with swords, but with values. They took the very qualities they lacked, power, pride, dominance, and called them evil. And they took their own qualities, humility, obedience, meekness, and called them virtuous. Nietzsche named this reversal slave morality, and he believed it eventually won. It became the moral operating system of the West, the quiet assumption that modesty is always better than ambition, that fitting in is always safer than standing out, that wanting more for yourself is somehow selfish or wrong. Here's the point. This wasn't a system built by philosophers reasoning carefully about the good life. It was built by a psychological reflex, resentment, dressed up as morality. And most of us are still living inside the walls it built, mistaking those walls for the shape of the universe itself. So how do you actually get out? Nietzsche's answer begins with a demolition. He believed you cannot build new values on top of borrowed ones. You have to first find the courage to ask, of every single belief you carry, is this actually mine? Or did I simply never question it? This is uncomfortable work because most people discover that a frightening percentage of their values were never examined at all. They were installed. And Nietzsche says the sign of a person still trapped in the herd is simple. They get defensive the moment a belief is questioned because somewhere inside, they know they never built it themselves. The first move, then, is not creation. It's honest interrogation. Pull every inherited value into the light and ask it to justify itself. Most won't survive the question. But tearing things down is only half the work. Nietzsche was deeply suspicious of people who mistake rebellion for freedom, the ones who define their entire identity by what they're against. Rejecting the herd's values while still organizing your whole life around opposing them is not freedom. It's just obedience in reverse. You are still letting the herd write the terms of your life. You've simply flipped the sign from positive to negative. Real independence, Nietzsche insisted, requires a second, harder step: creation. Once you've cleared the ground, you have to build something in its place. And this is where most people flinch, because building your own values means you can no longer blame the herd. your parents, your culture, or your circumstances when things go wrong. If you author your own values, you also own the consequences of living by them. This is, Nietzsche believed, exactly why so few people ever attempt it. It's not that people can't create their own values. It's that they're terrified of the responsibility that comes with it. So what does creating your own values actually look like in practice? It starts with a shift in the question you ask yourself. Stop asking, what am I supposed to do? And start asking, what would I do if no one was watching and no one would judge me? It means testing your beliefs against your own experience rather than public opinion. Not, what does everyone say about ambition, about pleasure, about risk, about solitude, but what have I actually learned about these things from living my own life? It means being willing to hold a belief that makes you unpopular if you've genuinely reasoned your way to it. Nietzsche never said the crowd is always wrong. He said the crowd is dangerous precisely because most people never check. They simply assume the crowd is right because it's the crowd. And it means accepting a kind of solitude. Not loneliness for its own sake, but the quiet distance that comes from no longer needing the herd's approval to feel like your life is valid. Nietzsche lived this distance almost literally, moving from city to city without a permanent home, without a wife, without a stable career for most of his adult life, precisely because he refused to purchase belonging at the cost of his own thinking. This is not comfortable. Nietzsche never promised comfort. He promised something else, what he called becoming who you are. Not who you were told to be, not who is easiest to be around other people, who you actually are once every borrowed value has been stripped away and rebuilt by your own hand. There's a test Nietzsche offers, almost like a private ritual, for checking whether a value is truly yours. Imagine defending it to yourself, alone, in a room, with no audience, no applause, no one to impress. If the belief still holds, if you'd still choose it with nothing to gain from anyone else knowing, it's probably real. If it collapses the moment the audience disappears, it was never yours. It was a costume. This doesn't mean tearing apart every convention just to prove independence. Nietzsche wasn't calling for chaos. Some inherited values will survive the interrogation. You may examine honesty or discipline or loyalty and find they hold up perfectly well under your own scrutiny. That's fine. That's actually the point. A value that survives your own honest questioning becomes yours, even if it happens to match what everyone else believes too. The difference isn't the belief itself. It's whether you own it or it owns you. This is the quiet, difficult work Nietzsche was pointing to when he described the sheep and the herd. Not contempt for other people, a warning to himself and to anyone paying close attention that an unexamined life is not a personal failing. It's the default setting of being human. Something has to be actively, deliberately overcome. Most people will never do this work. They will live inside inherited values their entire lives, never once asking where those values came from, and they will likely be comfortable and in many ways content. Nietzsche wasn't writing for those people. He was writing for the ones who feel a quiet, persistent discomfort with a life that was handed to them instead of built by them. The ones who suspect, somewhere underneath the noise, that most of what they believe was never actually chosen. To those people, his message across a lifetime of writing was consistent. Stop asking the herd what to value. Stop borrowing your sense of a good life from people who never examined their own. Go into the solitude. Ask the hard questions. Tear down what doesn't survive honest scrutiny. And then, with whatever is left, build something deliberately, painfully, honestly, that is finally entirely your own. Because in the end, Nietzsche believed there are only two ways to live. As a sheep, carried along by values you never chose. Or as the rare person willing to stand alone long enough to ask, what do I actually believe and why? The herd will always be there, waiting, offering comfort in exchange for obedience. The only question that matters is whether you're willing to walk away from it.